Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. And almost 24 hours on from the pain at Hampden Park yesterday, we are finally sitting down to discuss Celtic's loss in the Scottish Cup final against Aberdeen. They failed to make it a treble. The season is over and sadly ends on quite a dampening note. But is it the end of the world? Is it cause for concern? Well, there's certainly a lot of opinions that we need to take out from yesterday's game and dissect. I'm going to try and do that as eloquently, as best as I can this afternoon. And ultimately, it's time I finally give you my thoughts about the Scottish Cup final. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. Apologies for the delay in match reaction. I didn't do a runner. I didn't avoid trying to talk about defeat. I didn't avoid trying to talk about losing in a cup final. It's something I don't think I've ever had to do on this channel. In fact, since I started my journey as Ryan118 here on YouTube, we've never lost in a cup final. It's just not happened. This is the first time I need to sit down and talk about Celtic losing in a cup final. And when I utter those words, I actually just think to myself, holy God almighty, what a period of time we have lived through. And it's not an excuse making up for the failures of yesterday or me trying to gloss over the mistakes or the problems that were on show. But it just, when I say it aloud, I think to myself, God almighty, 10 years I've almost been doing this, and it's the first time I've had to talk about losing in a cup final. We are spoiled rotten, quite frankly. But yeah, I wanted to take some time to dissect it. I wanted to let the feelings settle. Everybody was still very raw with emotion after the penalty shootout finished yesterday. So I thought I would leave it settle with folk before I came on here to give my opinion or let everybody go mad in the comments section. And ultimately I wanted to go out for a pint to drown my sorrows, and that's exactly what I done. So Celtic lost. Aberdeen have won the Scottish Cup. Congratulations to them. Celtic don't win a treble this year. A double will have to do. That's consecutive doubles now for Brendan Rodgers since returning to Celtic, which on paper is fantastic. You're buzzing about that. I think if you told me 10, 15 years ago that I would witness my side, my team win double after double with trebles sprinkled in quite frequently, I would have bit the hand off for it, because I remember a time where trebles weren't won and doubles were hard to come by. Don't take it for granted. I think yesterday's defeat really puts into perspective how special a treble actually is, because I think we were all naive going into the game yesterday. I'll hold my hands up and say I was naive of it. I acknowledge that Aberdeen had every chance of winning the game, and they'd done exactly what they had to. They came to Hampden, they played a brutal brand of football. It was a horrible game to watch. But if they wanted any chance of winning the Scottish Cup, that's what they had to do. Fine by me. Fair play to them. Because if they tried to go about it any other way, they probably would have got beat 4 or 5-1 again. They set up the way they had to set up, and they won the Cup. Congrats to them. But I think that yesterday puts into perspective how special a treble is and how much we should cherish it. And once again, I don't want to gloss over the mistakes. I don't want to make out that everything's perfect and it's all hunky-dory. That's not the case. I'm not coming on here to pretend like everything's fine. But I do want to just drill in the fact that these trebles are special. And they're not easy to win year after year. And you might think it is, and you might have got to your point psychologically where you think Celtic should be winning trebles. I heard stories yesterday of people sitting beside other people at Hampden and they were saying, we should be winning the treble every year. No, we shouldn't. A cup final is tough to win. We saw that in December in the League Cup final. We saw it yesterday in the Scottish Cup final. Not a good enough performance from Celtic, and there's problems that need to be addressed, but it is such a hard thing to do, winning trebles. And it won't cover for the disappointment that I felt after that final penalty kick yesterday. But I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it. If you want me to be brutally honest, if you want me to sit here and give you an honest opinion, you might not like this. You might think it takes away value of me being a Celtic supporter. You might think that I'm not staunch enough for your liking. I am not going to lose sleep over Celtic losing the Scottish Cup. I'm not. I was disappointed. I took it in the chin, and I'll move on. And I'm sorry if that's not what you want to hear of Ryan118, #1 most subscribed to Celtic fan channel on YouTube. But I would be lying at you. I would be talking utter nonsense. And I would be coming across as a Mark Goldbridge exaggerating for the views if I was to force rage upon you. I am not raging. I'm gutted. I'm not raging. Maybe I should be. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't know. But I'm not raging. Why? Because Celtic have had a phenomenal season. We've come off the back of another double. We've come off the back of a successful European campaign, which we saw improvement in. We would have loved more, we would have loved better, but what can you do when you're beaten by the last kick of the ball against Bayern Munich, champions of Germany? I am overall very happy with how this season has gone. Could it have gone better? Obviously. Of course it could have. But I would be lying to you, and I'm not going to do that to you and forcing rage down a camera, because I'm next season, I'm ready to go again. We'll get it back. One day Celtic will win the treble again. Will it be next season? I don't know, but when it is, I'll be happy. And I'll be counting my lucky stars, because I've lived through a hell of a lot of success so far, and I know I'm going to see a hell of a lot more. And I don't want anybody to pick that up as me trying to force a certain point of view on you. I don't want people thinking that I'm saying you can't be angry or you can't be raging. Of course you can. If you're raging about it, if you're fuming about it, fair. I was pretty gutted. I was devastated walking up the stairs at Hampden. I felt the way Callum McGregor felt, which we'll come on to later on in this video. I was devastated. I'm not saying that you have to be accepting of losing. I'm not saying that you have to pretend that everything's okay. Of course not. Your opinions are perfectly entitled. What I do think is a bit far is some of the reaction. And I think that's one of the bigger talking points coming out of the game. I think some Celtic fans really show their true colours. And sometimes our support are as bad as the other ones across the city. You know, we go on about how they come out every year and say ridiculous things. We've got Celtic supporters going on Twitter following the Scottish Cup final saying the manager should be sacked, that the whole team needs scrapped, that the captain should be stripped of his armband, was some of the opinions that I was seeing yesterday. And I just didn't bother with it, because it's that kind of, you know, when I went back on the supporters bus yesterday, it was a case of, it was shite, you know, but it is what it is. I think that was basically everybody's evaluation leaving the ground that I came across, whether I knew you or didn't, the people that I spoke to leaving the stadium. I think we all had the same opinions. But then you go online, and it's just a different world, you know, it's a completely different world. Faceless accounts, crying for ludicrous things. I'm fucking fed up with it, to be quite honest. Yesterday was gutting. Yesterday was shite. Celtic were shite. The tactics were shite. The manager was shite. The team was shite. It was shite. But perspective is needed once in a while. And I'm certainly not going to pretend like I'm not going to go on and criticise folk here or criticise certain things about yesterday's game. But do me a favour sometimes, please. You're entitled to the opinion, but some people just need to rein it in a wee bit. So what went wrong? You know, in the game of football itself, what went wrong for Celtic? I think there's a number of things that you could highlight and talk about. I mean, the game itself, as I've already said, was terrible. It was a rotten game of football. Celtic never got any real rhythm going. Aberdeen were very well set up. They were very defensively assured. And Celtic just didn't break it down. And that's been a problem a few times, hasn't it? I think that Brendan Rodgers next season really needs to think about breaking down these low blocks in a more efficient manner. Because every time we come up against a team who are sitting deep, who are low block or whatever you want to call it, we can't just pass the ball side to side. We need to come up with a way to score goals and to unlock these teams. Now, I get the whole thing that Rodgers, you know me, Rodgers fan number one and all the rest of it. I believe he'll come back bigger and stronger. This is hopefully all the ammunition he needs to go on next year and win the lot. But, you know, I get what Rodgers said that day in the press conference when he came out and said sometimes you need to change the point of attack. And I get that, I understand that, but it can't be as brutal as it was yesterday when the going gets tough. We need to find ways to make it easier for the team and ultimately for the supporters, so the ones that are having to watch it. But it was turgid yesterday. It was lifeless. And I do think that in football, you can only do so much against teams that are set up in certain ways. But, you know, take a shot from outside the box. Do something different. The team were so scared to take a risk, it felt like. And I don't know how much of that comes from the manager and how much of it comes from the group of players we have. I don't know what the split is. I don't know if it's a 50-50 responsibility thing here. But there's got to be somebody that's standing up and saying, let's take a risk. And there was none being taken. You know, I remember, fair enough, in the extra time, Jeffrey Schlupp smacks the bar. That's from outside the box. Fair enough. But it's not enough. It's not enough in the game. You need a wee bit more. And sometimes goals come from spectacular moments, and Celtic aren't creating any spectacular moments. And that's where my worry came from yesterday's performance. So I don't know what needs to change with that, if it's the manager's philosophies or if it's the players and their bravery. But something needs to be addressed about it, because I cannot be asked with this same conversation every time we come to a cup final or we come to a game against a team who are fighting for their life defensively. We need to be better. We need to be better. It's as simple as that. And with the quality we have in the park and the money we've spent, we can't say the manager's not been backed. We can't say that the quality isn't there in the team. Of course it's there. But it needs to be used better, if you get what I'm trying to say. There's no many excuses for Celtic's performance yesterday. However, what I would say is if we took our chances better, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Celtic should have won. I don't think we were overly worthy of winning. It wasn't like we were incredible, but we had the big chances. Dyson Maeda's miss will go down as one of the all-time great misses of Celtic recent history. He should be scoring, and it turned into the Dyson Maeda that we were all unsure about a couple of years ago, rather than the Dyson Maeda who won Player of the Year. And I get it, it's a terrifying moment. I can't talk about anybody missing big opportunities when you've seen the stinker I dropped at Parkhead on Monday. I get it, it's nervy, it's a big moment, and sometimes you just lose the bottle in those instances. But we could be having a very different conversation right now. None of these conversations would have been coming up if Celtic buried one more of those chances yesterday. But that's football. It's if buts and maybe. So there is no excuses. But we just had to be better, man. We just had to be better. And attacking wise, I think there was a real problem late in the game, and I think everybody's touched on this to some extent. Celtic are lacking depth, aren't they? Like, it's crazy, but we are, and you suddenly take Rio Hatate out of the team, and you start getting quite thin when it comes to your options, and we didn't properly replace. Yesterday was the example of how the mistake was very prevalent still of not replacing Kyogo, right? That was there, and I don't think Ida had a necessarily bad game. He didn't get to do much. He was barely in the game, but he wasn't bad, I didn't think. He didn't get much to do. I thought he was taken off far too early, and we'll maybe touch on that a little bit later, but I like wee Johnny Kenny, but it's not exactly the guy you're wanting brought on the Scottish Cup final. And Forrest goes off injured. We know that Jota's out injured. Yes, I think we've been pretty unfortunate, but I think that we were lucky to get by to the end of the season because we were so far ahead without replacing Kyogo properly. But yesterday really put into perspective how much of a mistake that might have been. Because when Ida came off the park, the attacking quality wasn't there for us. And I think that depth-wise, that's something that needs to be addressed moving into the summer. Now, I don't think we need too much. If we were to keep the squad the exact same, which won't happen, we know players will leave, that's natural order, things will happen, people come and go. But if hypothetically the squad was to stay the same, I think we're 3 or 4 additions away from having a pretty perfect squad in terms of depth and first team quality. Obviously injuries come into consideration and that changes things, but let's just say an injury-free Celtic side I think is 3 or 4 players away from being fine. But yesterday it wasn't fine, and ultimately it's the cup finals that make you pay. So yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of things that I think this might do good for Celtic. If you were to try and flip it, I think it will give the board the rocket up the arse they need to spend big money. I think it will give Rodgers the rocket up the arse to get rid of the players who just aren't good enough and to go out with a chip on his shoulder next year to prove a point. And I think it will give the players a rocket up the arse to go, well, you know what? We weren't good enough. And maybe the closing part of the season wasn't good enough. We need to make up for that. And I think a big example of that was the reaction of the captain. We've seen the images, we've seen the videos of Callum McGregor crying at the end of the game, and people have different opinions of that sort of thing, especially if you're not a Celtic supporter. It's easy to point and laugh. I love that. This is the most successful Celtic captain of my life. He has won countless trophies throughout his career. Losing a Scottish Cup final, to most people, when you've won that much, maybe doesn't hit that hard. The fact that McGregor is reacting like that shows you the quality, the mentality of the captain that we have. And for some people to be calling for him to be stripped of the armband is just insanity to me. Those are the type, I say everybody's entitled to their opinions. Those are the type of opinions that are for idiots. I'll just call it how it is. And if you're one of the ones that think that, I would call you an idiot. If you think that McGregor should be stripped of the armband after losing one cup final, you're an idiot. And I'm not beating around the bush. Gonna say it how it is. But his reaction yesterday was tremendous. Because this is a guy that wants to make up for it, who feels that disappointment of every supporter in the stands and deems it unacceptable. And that's the attitude you need to resonate through the whole squad. We know that there's players in that Celtic team that are done, that we will not see again. And maybe that's good. But McGregor is a Celtic player who's certainly not done. And that attitude needs to go around every new face that comes through the door this summer. So I, for one, I was very happy to see his reaction, for as painful as it was, because it means so much. So next season is huge. It's big for everybody involved. The club, with Brendan Rodgers entering the last year of his current contract, with the board on a bit of a shaky peg with some supporters. I've had a great year, and it's a bitter way to end it, but I've had a great year. However, there's things that need to be addressed and things that need to change. There's some stale quality to this side at the minute. And without being overreactionary about it, I don't want to come across as saying, like, oh, I'm not one of the ones that's like, the team's rotten. The team's not rotten. The team's good. But there is some staleness in it. And I would be naive to suggest there isn't. And that's something that Brendan Rodgers himself has came out and said. You know, he needs freshness on the side, and freshness is one of the most important things in football. So, yeah, it's a big, big summer coming up, and it was disappointing yesterday. It was disappointing. From all angles you try and cover it, there's no redeeming qualities to the game of football that was played, and from a Celtic point of view. Of course, Aberdeen fans will have had a great day. There's a lot of redeeming qualities for them. The year of the underdog is still well and truly alive, apparently. But Celtic have a few things to change and to think about going into this summer. As I said, you know, I'm confident we'll strike back, man. I put my neck on the line following our defeat to Rangers in January, just after the new year, and I said, doesn't matter the result today, Celtic will still win a treble. And I hold my hands up. I was wrong. But we were a penalty shootout away from it. And we were a Kasper Schmeichel own goal away from it. We really should have won the treble this year. The only reason we didn't was because of Celtic. So, I'm not going to put my neck out in the line and say this time next year, Celtic will be celebrating a treble. I've got a few months to decide that. But what I need is for Celtic to give me reason to believe that. What I need is for Celtic to turn around this summer, do the business, qualify for the Champions League, and start this season with the same ferocity that we started this season, and sustain it right till the last kick of the ball. In the Scottish Cup final next year, I expect to see Celtic there. And I expect to see them finishing the season with the same intensity and ferocity that they started. Because we'll start the season strong. And maybe we will win a treble. Who knows? But yesterday was gutting. Like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.